All right, guys, we are back again with another kit. This is the Lycoris Recoil from the anime, and this is how the kit will come. Let's get everything out here. We have got the muzzle brake. We have the grip surround the mag. We have the frame. This one is a very easy assemble kit. Our smalls bag and our slide. We'll go ahead real quick, get the normal things out of the way. You can use regular super glue, thick super glue to assemble these any of these kits. I recommend CA glue. It's basically a two-part super glue. It's like thick super glue with an activator that instantly sets and activates it. Excuse me. You know, I'm not recommending this brand for any other reason. It's just a brand I've been using for a while. This and Bob Smith CA glues are really good. This size with about the half the size of this activator, I think is like $9 or $10, something like that. But it gives you a little bit more work time when you glue two parts together, because super glue instantly starts setting. Even when you squirt it out of the bottle, before you even get the two parts together, it'll start setting. This, you can put some glue, put the two parts together, move it around a little bit, and then spray it with activator and it'll set it. So it makes life a lot easier. On this one, all you're going to need is a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench or 1.5 millimeter Allen bit. This is, I always say this little bit set, this comes from Harbor Freight. It's like $9 or $10. I've got a bunch of the sets sitting around, but it has all these little bits and flat blades, Torx, Allens, Phillips, all the things that you would possibly need to do any kind of assembly or repair work and stuff. But anyways, let's get out our little smalls here. We're going to have our trigger. We have our steel rod, which is going to be for the trigger. We'll have our orange tip. Sit over here. All right, we have our hammer. We have our safety switch, our slide catch, and our rear sight. Sorry about that, rear sight. If I quit dropping stuff. And we have our front sight, little bitty guy there, okay? Then we'll have a little bag in there, which will contain 4 identical screws, which will be for the grip, and then our trigger spring. So I'm gonna set this off to the side. And the first thing that we can go ahead and do is, first let me clean off a few of these little boogies that I didn't get while preparing for this, because like usual, think I'm prepared, but I'm not. But that's fine. Whoop, actually forgot one thing. There is also 2 magnets that will come in the kit, and that will be for our mag. To be able to make the mag removable, there's a hole there and a hole there, and it will make it to where it will stay in or be removable. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and put the magnets in. There's a little way I do this so that I make sure that I keep the polarity correct on the magnets. Because you have 2 magnets, you want them attracting each other. If you glue one in one way and one in the other way, you'll make it to where it pushes, the magnets will push away from each other, which is not ideal because it'll just push the mag out of the gun. So what I do is I stick them together, and I take a marker with black, red, green, whatever color, it doesn't matter. And I will color both back sides of the magnets. And to install magnets, I always just stick them to the end of like a screwdriver, and just, you can leave them both together. But the whole thing is in your mind, whatever color, black, red, or whatever, but like black here, I just always think in my mind black to the back. And basically what that means is when I glue these magnets in now, I'm always going to put the black inside first to the back. And now that I have them marked, as long as I glue both of them in with the black going in first, they're in the correct polarity. So, I was about to say, let me get that steel rod out of the way before it does just that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of glue. And remember, since this takes up the whole space, you don't need a huge amount of glue. But if it squishes out, this will be something you want to do before you paint. Because if it squishes out, you can just wipe it off. So we've got the black on one side. I just take them both and stick them in there and then pull my screwdriver off to one side. And then I'll pull that magnet off to one side and lay it over. And push down, and if anything squishes out, you can wipe it off. Whoops. I'm going to spray that pretty generously so that it gets down in there. I'm going to lay that off to the side. And so now we're left with one magnet, black on one side and not on the other. So I'm going to stick the black to where it's on the back side. So when I go to stick this in, I'm putting the black inward. And get my glue here. Never mind my shaky hands. I've had way too much coffee today. And so there's our little dot. And this one I'm going to go ahead and just spray before I put in. I'm going to stick it down in there and pull my screwdriver off to the side. Press down and wipe. And it's perfectly fine to paint right over the magnets because it won't affect their strength. So if you notice, there's a little bit of glue there that squished out as I was wiping it off. Make sure it's in there good and cured. And so what we have now is we have our mag, and it's nice and tight. So to pull it out, there it goes. It's not going anywhere. So I'm going to take it out and lay it off to the side. We got our magnets done. Excuse me. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and put our trigger in. So we're going to need the steel rod, the spring, and our trigger. And what we want to do is we want to slide the rod in, make sure it slides nice and smooth. If it seems to bind a little bit, just kind of twist it and move it around in there, but it should be fine. What we're doing is you want to make the trigger, face forward. And what we do is we drop in from the top. If you notice, there's a hole right here, and in the back side of the body, there's a hole. That's where the spring goes. Basically on this, all I do is I stick the spring into the back of the trigger, set it down in there, kind of looks like that. And and again, I'm trying to do this, I push it back, and then I push down on it, and then it pops in. Okay, so just kind of hold your finger on the trigger because there's a hole in the front, and we're going to take this rod and we're going to slide this rod down in here. Now we get to a point it stops because we need to pull up on the trigger a bit to get it into the hole. So now we're going to hold our finger there on the rod, and see, now we have our spring-loaded trigger. It's nice and stout. So now we don't glue the rod. We want the rod to move. There's a little bit of movement room for that rod. So that guarantees our sliding action is nice and smooth at all times. So the rod just stays where it's at. And when we glue the slide on, the slide will actually keep the rod where it's supposed to be and not come out. So what we'll do real quick is we're going to go ahead and glue on the rear sight and the front sight to get that out of the way so we're not holding the whole thing up. Now what we want to do is, if you look at the sight, there's a little dot. That dot is like where you'll paint the sight, and then you'll come and put a little white dot or a green dot, how real sights are. And on the rear sight, you notice there's two more dots. And so basically what it is, it's so that when you look down the slide, you'll line up the three dots, and you see, so boom, that's basically how you use the iron sights on a pistol. So you want the dot going towards the rear. Let me get back, there we go. If you notice, there's a little notch down in there, and there's a little tab there. What we're doing is we're gluing this dude in just like this. and it will set in there. And of course, when we glue it, we want to make sure that it's straight, and like it's sitting a little crooked right now. So, you know, this is where it comes into play, that you can put glue on what you're doing. And the CA glue, sorry, had a brain fart for a second. You can put the CA glue, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little drop down inside the little channel, the little cutout there. If you get any on there, you can wipe it a little bit. And with the CA glue, remember the dot to the back, I'm going to put it in there so it sets. And I'm going to check and make sure that it's 90 degrees. So that it's when you're looking down, it's 90 degrees to the body. Nice right angle. Then I'm going to spray the activator. I'm going to double check that it's nice and straight. I'm going to hit it with a little bit more on each side. Let that set for a second and it's done. Okay, so on the rear, you notice one side is higher. You want to put it to the back so that it looks just like that. And on this one, it can slide back and forth in there. When you glue this, if you hold it like this with your fingers overlapping, when you drop it in that channel, your fingers will help center it where it needs to be. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of glue, not much, because we don't want it squishing out everywhere. So that's about all that I've put on there. I'm going to flip my side over, and I'm going to spray it because it's easier to go ahead and have it start activating. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to set right down that channel, hold both fingers on each side, squeezing it. So I'm squeezing the sight and the slide, and it centers it. So nice and done. There we go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and glue the slide on. If you notice, there's two rails there and they just match. What we're going to do is glue it on and slide it back as far as it'll go. That's all we're doing. We're going to want to make sure we put the glue on here at the openings of our channels and stay away from our trigger, because of course we don't want to get glue down in our trigger and then our stuff's not going to work. So what I do on this is I start right about there and just make sure that I hit both sides of that channel. Stop there, come back past the trigger. I'm zigzagging as I go here, just making sure I get it on both sides. Flip my side over, or my slide over, hit me some activator. Go ahead and take this and set it back as far as I can, then drop it on. Because you don't want to set it on and slide it on, because you will pull glue back to your trigger. Go ahead and let that sit there for a minute. Okay, it's already dried. Nice and solid. Ow, got a little piece of plastic under my elbow. It's kind of like stepping on a Lego. So this is our muzzle brake. And of course and most of this, like, you'll want to paint the muzzle brake separate. You'll want to paint the slide separate. And the reason you'll want to do that is because if you paint them separate, when you put them together, it keeps really nice, crisp lines. If you were to glue this together and paint and all that stuff, you're going to fill up these lines with primer and paint. But if you paint them separate, you don't have to paint down in here, you know. And if you paint like the receiver, the slide, and the muzzle brake separate, then when you put everything together, you maintain all of your nice, crisp, detailed lines and stuff. So we're going to go ahead and put this, the muzzle brake on. Now on the muzzle brake, I'm going to put the glue in the muzzle brake here, because if I put glue here, I might go past what's going to get covered. So the easiest thing to do is just put your glue in the muzzle brake. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run glue down this side, down this side. I'm going to put a little bit down the center. So if you see, just a little bit there and there. That's all that's needed. And then I'm going to spray my receiver. And I'm just going to set it in there just like that. And now I'm holding up and back pressure. Get it right where we want it. go. Get off the other little boogie that I missed when I was cleaning up the parts. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put on the grip. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want to make sure that when we glue the safety switch on, we have it in the right position. So you're going to just put the grip on, and you'll notice it'll line up with the holes in the body. And you need these 4 screws. Excuse me, and you'll need a flat blade screwdriver. So what you'll do is go ahead and just line those up. These will cut threads as they're screwing into the body, and you don't want to make these overly tight, especially because you'll paint this grip separate because it'll be like a wood color. You know, the walls that it screws into aren't super thick, so you don't want to torque down on them. They do tighten down nice and tight though. Get the 4th one in here. There we go. So now our grip is on. So now what we're going to want to do is, actually we'll go ahead and just put the hammer in real quick. There's a notch back here. The hammer just goes in here and sets down. And once it's in, there's a gap like that on the top and a gap below like it's supposed to be. So let me pick this little piece off here. And the things that I'm picking off are from the support material that I clean off of here. So if you look, the contact points are the face of this, the bottom edge, and this. So I'm going to just take a little bit of glue. I'm going to put a little bit on the contact, back in there, and right there. And that's it. We don't want a whole bunch. Hold that. Pick my gun up. And we're going to set it in there just like that. Now I'm pushing forward and down. Okay, and that's on. Now our safety switch, if you notice, it's got a little nipple right there and a hole right there. And this is why we went ahead and put the grip on, because we want it turned down enough that it doesn't go up into the safety notch on here. We want it turned down to where it clears the bottom of that, but it's not turned to where it's resting on that. We want it to rest right about there. So I'm just going to take a little glue, and I'm going to put just a dab, little bitty dab, and that's a scientific measurement in case you didn't know. So that's all I did, was put a little dab on the end of the nipple and on there. And you don't want to smear it all across there, because the reason is because when you drop this on, you'll want to move it back and forth just a bit. And if you covered the whole bottom when you put it in, if it's not right where you want it and you twist it, it's going to smear glue out. So you always just have to be conscious of your glue. And, you know, you try to stay away from the edges as much as possible, and don't put a bunch. If you have 2 pieces that stick right against each other, realize that the glue is going to smush out. So if you have a wide surface, you're only going to put some down the center, because when you put the 2 pieces together, it's going to smush out to the sides. And now the only thing that's left, well, the second to the last thing that's left is the slide lock. It will get glued on the side here, and it will just rest right about there. Not quite touching the slide, not way down here, but up against the slide and then down just a little bit. And again, you know, you'll want to paint these separate. And a really good way, people ask me, well, how the heck do you hold these small parts while you're trying to paint? I use 2-sided tape, and I'll explain what I mean by that. You can get the really thin 2-sided tape, or you can get 2-sided tape that's like foam tape. I use the foam tape, and you tear you off a piece and stick it down onto your, you know, a piece of cardboard or whatever. And then you can take these parts, and the part that doesn't need to be painted, or the bottom side, just stick it to that tape. You can stick you up a whole row of them. Then you can hold that piece of cardboard and move all those small parts around any direction way you need to. And they will stay right there on that 2-sided tape. And then when you're done, just pop them right off the 2-sided foam tape, and you're good to go. So we'll put our mag in there. me put my glue up. All right. So there. Oh, and then our orange tip, which needs to be put on. Don't forget that. But there is our fully assembled kit. Spring-loaded trigger, removable mag. And there it is.